Well, hello there, fellow YouTubers. It's been quite a while since I made a video. Just been working and working and working. But I have acquired a couple of new movies, and most of them are of the Disney variety. So we're going to have a look at those today. It's a really hot summer in Sweden. We've got a lot of forest fires over here. It's been holding steady at about 86 Fahrenheit. 86 Fahrenheit every single day. First day in a long time that it's been raining. It's actually cooled off a little bit, and I get sick. So that is just ironic. Anyway, I did pick up Star Wars: The Last Jedi, the Steelbook edition. I couldn't resist. I know that Disney are really good at double dipping and doing several releases of a film, but this is actually a very nice edition, I have to say. It's a 2-disc edition. Beautiful artwork on the steelbook. Really like these character portraits of Rey and Kylo Ren. And it's actually got a lot of in-depth special features for once. For once they didn't skimp on the bonus features with the first edition, which is good to see. I hope that's a trend that will continue, because Disney are infamous for doing double dips and triple dips, and also they're really nefarious because they'll release exclusive bonus features with every release. So if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, you have to buy every single edition to get all the bonus features, and that's really, really annoying. Anyway, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, one of the most divisive Star Wars films ever made. This really split the community in half. Some people loved it, a lot of people hated it, and there was a real backlash and a real uproar, and now people are saying that Star Wars under Disney's reign is sort of dead, and it's falling apart, and it's horrible, and it's terrible. I don't think this film is a total catastrophe. I actually think that this film is solid at its core, but it has problems. It should have and could have been better. And the thing that really annoys me about the film is the fact that they didn't really plan ahead. They didn't sit down at a meeting with a pencil and a piece of paper and say, this is how we're going to plot out the major story beats of our new trilogy. If you buy the rights for Star Wars for $4 billion, then you should be able to plan out the basic beats of a trilogy. And I understand that they want to, introduce new directors with every film, and they want those directors to feel at home, to be able to create their film, which in a sense is a very good thing. But I still think that they should be on the same page when it comes to the characters, the major story arcs, the beats. You should have that stuff planned out in advance. You can't just make a completely different story every time if you're going to make a cohesive trilogy. So that kind of bothers me, because I thought The Force Awakens was really good. I mean, it's not the most original film, I know that, but it's still a very, very good Star Wars film in my opinion. And this is not at all like The Force Awakens. It's tonally different. Characters abandon plots from the first one. The humor is different. The style is different. It's a very, 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 very different film. So when you watch them back to back, you don't get that sense of a cohesion, I guess, and that's a little bothersome. I actually really like Rey and especially Kylo Ren's character arcs in the film. I actually think that if you watch this film at least a good 2 or 3 times, I think you can actually really appreciate what Rian Johnson's trying to do, which is to ground this a little bit more and to make it more dramatically satisfying. That is to say, give the characters some depth, some gray areas, challenge them a little bit, and make it not so clear-cut and not so much just a simple popcorn movie. And actually, in a way, I actually kind of like that. It's a really ballsy thing to do with Star Wars, because that sort of goes against the grain, against the sort of core tenements of what a Star Wars movie is. And right now, we're sort of seeing that with Disney. They're trying to do new things, they're trying to, try new things, and trying to take new approaches to Star Wars, and in a way I think that's wonderful. It's just that this did not succeed as well as it should have. That's very unfortunate. A lot of people were very, very, very upset about how they handled Luke Skywalker in the film. I'm sort of mixed on that. I think it could have been done better. Definitely could have been done better, but I also don't think that this film was ever going to be a happy, heroic Luke Skywalker, the Jedi Knight hero, you know? Because honestly, that would have been rather two-dimensional, and that was not what they were going for in this film. I don't think this trilogy was ever meant to be Star Wars, the original trilogy, part 2. And what I mean by that is I don't think we were ever meant to see Luke and Leia and Han just sort of go off on new adventures and meet up and hug each other and stuff like that. And I kind of like that. I like that they have the integrity to say that this is not your parents' Star Wars. We are passing the torch to a new generation here. And that means that you're going to lose some of your fan favorites. But they could have been lost in a better way, perhaps. So to really summarize my opinions on the film, I think Rey and especially Kylo Ren, I think Kylo Ren is a fantastic character. Adam Driver is an amazing actor, and he's doing incredible things with the character. I just love that character now. I actually think that he's one of the most interesting and compelling Star Wars characters ever, actually, because he's got that gray area between light and dark. He's someone who wants to be bad, but he can't quite do the wrong things. I think that's a really, really interesting approach. Like, he's trying to live up to Darth Vader, but he can't quite do it. He's always got this side that hesitates. But I really like those character arcs. I really like what they did with those characters in the film. A lot of wonderful surprises there. But I think Luke Skywalker could have been handled a bit better. And I do think that other characters such as Finn and Rose, that part is more or less just a gigantic waste of time in this film. And that is a real shame. It really feels like Rian Johnson, this was like Rey and Kylo was kind of the meat and potatoes, and that's what he really wanted to devote his time to. And then he realized, oh shit, I've got all these other characters that have to be in the film, and they have to have their own stories. And it's like, well, they can go off, I'll shove them aside, they can go on their own little adventure. So, mixed film. I still think it's a good film, not a great film. Pretty far from great, actually, but it's okay. I can still watch this film and appreciate a lot of things about it. I don't think it's a total train wreck, but yeah. Disney is in sort of a precarious situation right now. Solo didn't do as well as they were anticipating, but that's mainly because they had to reshoot the entire film, which is pretty crazy. So it didn't make back its box office, and now they're sort of putting the anthology films or the Star Wars story films on hold, at least for the time being, and focusing on the trilogies. I think that is probably a good idea, because I really, really want Episode 9 to go out on a bang. It has to be good. It just really, really, really needs to be a good film. So, yeah. Very nice Steelbook edition of The Last Jedi. Like I said, 2 discs, full audio commentary, a really good making-of documentary, where you actually see people doubt Rian Johnson's vision, which is interesting, to say the least. You don't see that a lot in Disney bonus materials. A lot of deleted scenes. You got a ton of great stuff here, actually. So I really like that. I really like that. It was almost like, okay, the film didn't do as well critically with fans as we wanted, so at least we're gonna give them a good Blu-ray edition. So that's quite nice. On another Star Wars note, I did go see Solo: A Star Wars Story, and ironically, I loved it. I'm probably one of the only people in the world who actually loved that film. I'll be totally honest and say that might be my second favorite Star Wars film. Because to me, Solo, despite being just a prequel, quote unquote, and just a Han Solo movie, quote unquote, was everything I wanted out of a Star Wars movie. It had great adventure, compelling characters, a great score, and it also had characters with an arc. They actually went places emotionally, which I really, really enjoyed. And I don't know, I love that film. I thought it was wonderful. Action-packed, great writing, great characters, and it had some surprises up its sleeve. It didn't really end the way you expected a film to end traditionally, and there was just a lot to enjoy about that. But anyway, I'm not going to discuss that right now, but yeah. So yeah, The Last Jedi definitely mixed, but if you do want to pick it up on Blu-ray, then I will say that this is a very good edition right out of the gate. So maybe they're finally learning a thing or two about how to make a good Blu-ray. I also picked up the Omen Trilogy on Blu-ray, finally. I have the DVD box set with 5 Omen films, which is the first 3, the Omen 4, and the 2006 Omen remake. I've circled this for a number of years now. Wanted to pick it up for a long time. These are classic horror films, really, really good horror films. I'm particularly fond of the Omen 2. So the Omen films, if you're not familiar with them, is about a young boy who is born in 1976. He is the son to the ambassador of Great Britain. And things start to happen around him. People begin to die, people fall victim to mysterious accidents, and there is sort of an air of menace around the boy, which is inexplicable and unexplainable. And all signs point towards the fact that the boy might be the Antichrist, the son of Satan. It's a really great classic trilogy from the 1970s. Really atmospheric, fantastic music, of course, by Mr. Jerry Goldsmith. And yeah, just a really classic trilogy. The pacing of 70s films tend to be a bit slower than modern films. You kind of have to be patient with the film. But they are very atmospheric. They're very fun to watch. And I'm particularly fond of The Omen 2, in which he is a teenager and he's sort of starting to discover the truth about himself. I don't know. I really like that film because he's a little bit more proactive. In the original film, the original classic, he's just a small boy. So there's always this question of, is he or isn't he? You can sort of chalk it up to, circumstance and stuff like that, which is interesting as well, of course. But I like the second one where it's a bit more overt and he learns the truth about himself. So anyway, really classic, great horror film. It's going to be really fun to rewatch these on Blu-ray. But I'm going to hang on to the DVD box set, like I said, because it contains The Omen 4, which is a god-awful movie, but it's still fun to own it. And The Omen remake, which I think was really, really good and competent, a really good, overall, fairly faithful remake of the original. So check out The Omen if you haven't already. Quite a cheap set, so can't hurt to pick it up. And then there was the big Disney sale, a big sale on Disney animation, and I actually placed 2 orders, and I really went through the entire Disney animated canon and looked at any film that I thought I wanted to own. I already owned quite a few, but I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to really fill out the collection and buy any animated Disney film that I might be interested in owning. So I picked up Fantasia. This is the classic film. This was the 3rd animated Disney classic. Fantasia, if you're not familiar with it, I think this is from 1940 or around that time anyway. It was a very experimental animated film for its time because this film is entirely comprised of animated sequences set to classical music. So you have all these beautiful classical pieces, and they've sort of interpreted those classical pieces in animation. And it's a very bold, interesting experiment, and it actually produced some of the finest animation that Disney's ever made. A lot of people recognize the Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mickey Mouse, in that famous costume. It's the one where all the brooms come to life. He uses a spell that makes all the brooms come to life, and he has to stop it. There's a breadth of fantastic animation in this. But that being said, I also think that this can be a bit tough to sit through in one stretch. Like, you really have to be ready for it. You have to be in the right mindset, in the right mood for it. So Fantasia is kind of it's a mixed bag, I really appreciate it on the one hand just for the artistry, because this is an amazing piece of art. That's really what it is. But on the other hand, as kind of a film, it can be kind of hard to swallow. And it can be hard because this is over 2 hours long, and that makes it one of the longest Disney films ever made, I think. I think Big Hero 6 was also fairly long, if I'm not mistaken, but it's actually really rare for Disney films to be over 2 hours long, and it's really rare for Disney films to even be 90 minutes long. You know, most classic Disney films are 70 or 80 minutes long. Probably not the Disney film you should show your youngest kids at first. I think this is more when you're a little bit older, and I do think that this will be appreciated by someone who has an artistic temperament, so to speak. So I really appreciate that about this film, and maybe I won't sit and watch this in its entirety every single year or something like that, but it's a great film to pop in, and you can just watch one sequence or two sequences and really be inspired by that. So as a film, I don't know if it's the greatest quote unquote film, but as a kind of artistic experience and a kind of artistic landmark, this is fantastic. Really, really, really unique and fantastic. I also picked up Bambi. Now, Bambi may not seem like the type of film I would pick up in the first place. The cover here, I think, does not do the film justice. A lot of people think of Bambi as the sort of cutesy animal film with this very fluffy, round, cute, lovable animals. But when you actually watch Bambi, it's actually quite different than that. It's a very naturalistic animated film, and it really takes the perspective of what's life like for animals in the forest. What's their daily life like? What do they do to survive? How do they see man? How do they perceive the threat of hunters who come into their forest? It's a very beautifully animated film. It's got a very unique, subdued, dreamlike art style. You'll notice that almost all the colors in this film are very muted and subdued, and that's a very naturalistic way of animating something. Normally things are very overdone, really bright, they really pop, they're really sort of animated, so to speak. But this film takes a much more naturalistic, natural approach, and I think that's really, really striking and beautiful. So again, this film is some of the greatest animation and art that Walt Disney has ever produced as a studio, I think. I've actually only seen Bambi a few times. I've only seen it about once or twice in my entire lifetime, but going back to it, especially this lovely Blu-ray edition, you can really appreciate the film as a work of art. And as a film, again, maybe it's a little cheesy, maybe it's a little bit hokey here and there, but just as a piece of art, and I really do genuinely mean that, a piece of genuine art, this film does stand the test of time really, really, really well. So again, if you're an artist, if you enjoy nature, if you like animals, if you like sort of studying nature and being outside in nature, and you kind of like to combine those things like painting or painting animals or naturalistic settings, then this Blu-ray is a must own. It's a really, really well made Blu-ray edition. You can tell when you pop in the disc, even the menus for this are beautifully made. Like, they are really, really proud of this film, and it really shows. There's an entire bonus feature on this disc that is, it's just the film itself. You watch the film itself, but there's a visual commentary. And in that visual commentary, you actually hear a reenactment of the story meetings behind the film. Meaning that you actually hear Walt Disney and the other animators and producers talk about each sequence, talk about how they came up with it, how they wanted to approach it, to really get a deep understanding for their mindset, their artistry, what they were thinking, what they were feeling at the time. And it's really fantastic. It's one of the best bonus features I've ever seen on a Disney Blu-ray. It's really good. So that comes highly, highly, highly recommended if you're an animator, an artist, or if you just sort of want to get an idea of how traditional animated films were made. Because that's a great, great feature. It's the entire film. Again, not a long film. It's about 70 minutes long, but still, the entire film explained through the actual story meetings, because they were all documented back in the day. They wrote down everything that was said in those story meetings. So you actually get the origin of the ideas, how they came up with everything, how they approached everything, and why. I honestly wish that more films would have bonus features like that, where you get just the meetings, just the behind the scenes, just the inspirations, and it's a gold mine. It's really great bonus features. But there's tons of other stuff on this. It's a really loaded Blu-ray. So Bambi may seem silly at first. You may think of it, dismiss it as a children's film, but when you actually sit down and watch Bambi as an adult with an open mind, I think you'll really appreciate the artistry here. It's really kind of it's almost like the Walt Disney Mona Lisa, so to speak. It's really an achievement, I think. Very well made film. So I've sort of really changed my mind about this film entirely. As a kid, I thought it was just sort of this cutesy animal film, but it's much more than that. So you can really appreciate this film on a different level. Also picked up Alice in Wonderland. I'll be honest with you, this is not my all-time favorite Disney film, but this was a real classic for the VHS generation. We had this on VHS back in the 90s when I was growing up, and we would watch it all the time, over and over again. I do think that the story of Alice in Wonderland is very whimsical, very nonsensical, and it's not really the best, again, film, quote-unquote, but it does lend itself to the art of animation really well. It's got a lot of music. I think this has more music in it than a lot of other Disney films. It has like 14 songs or something like that. A lot of music in it. And a lot of artistry and a lot of creativity. So you can really appreciate it on that level. Again, I'm not going to rank this really high in the annals of Disney animation, but it is kind of a classic. It's a bit nostalgic. I really like the songs, the music in this. I particularly like the Unbirthday song. So yeah, Alice in Wonderland, probably not going to rank among my top favorite Disney movies, but I do think that you can appreciate the sort of whimsical quality about it. It's pretty amazing how much animation they sort of stick into this film. There's such a variety of characters, a variety of songs, a variety of sights and sounds and things to explore. So I actually think that this is better aimed at younger children, probably because it's a very short, imaginative, colorful film, but probably not the best one from just a classic narrative sense. But again, it's very nostalgic for me because I grew up with this one on VHS. That's fun to come back to it and enjoy it again. Then we have Aristocats, and that falls into the exact same category. This was a film I used to own on VHS when I was very young, growing up. I think this is weird because I think we actually found this film on VHS, if I'm not mistaken. I think we were just walking around the neighborhood here, and I think we found a VHS tape on the ground, and the VHS tape was Aristocats. And we asked the neighbors if anybody had, lost it or been looking for it, and nobody said that they did, so we just took it home and kept it. I think that's what happened, but my stepfather claimed that wasn't the case at all, that we owned the movie for a long time. We had it since like the late 80s or something. So I can't quite be sure, because I know he has a very good memory. He recalls everything. Like you can ask him anything and he'll remember things from 20-30 years ago. So I'm not quite sure, but I know we had this on VHS, watched it all the time, over and over again, and we've always been a cat family. I've always loved cats. I've never ever been a dog person. I've always been a cat person. And I think this is a very fun, charming film that doesn't quite get as much love and appreciation as it deserves. I do think that this is a wonderful family film in the real sense of the word. It's got wonderful music, great characters. It's just a fun, delightful sort of, pick-me-upper. It's almost impossible to watch this film without being moved by it, without laughing or having a good time, I think. So I think Aristocats is wonderful. I like, again, I don't think it's like a filmic masterpiece, but I do think it's a very entertaining and fun film. I really like the characters. I really like the music. And this was a later Disney film from the 60s, I want to say, or something, and they weren't quite up to their high standards at the time. but it's still a very fun and memorable film. And I do think that it has become sort of a cult classic with the VHS and VCR generation, so to speak. So, not a lot of great bonus features on this one, but there's a fun short film from the 1950s called The Great Cat Family, which always makes me and my sister laugh when we watch that one. It's a lot of fun. I actually bought Aristocats on DVD for her a number of years ago, so she actually has it on DVD, but I thought, what the hell, I'll add this to my Blu-ray collection as well, because it is a real classic, a real genuine piece of family entertainment. So yeah, Aristocats, gotta have that one. Also picked up Robin Hood, and this is yet another movie that also falls into the VHS memory category for me. We had this on VHS growing up, watched it all. We didn't watch this as much, I think, because I don't remember this film in great detail. I remember scenes, I remember songs, I remember moments, but I've never really sort of taken Robin Hood to heart. It's never been one of those Disney films that I could recite backwards and forwards. When it comes to the Aristocats or Alice in Wonderland, I'm much more familiar with those, particularly the Aristocats. I know that film quite well. But Robin Hood was just kind of, I don't know, it never really stuck with me. We had it, we watched it, but it was never quite a real favorite. It is a pretty solid film. It's okay. I don't think it's like amazing. I don't think it's horrible, but I don't think it's not one of the best Disney films. I do think it is memorable for the music. Again, there's some really great music in this film. There's a lot of sort of folksy music, which is quite a rarity for the time, or for the studio, I should say. And yeah, it's an okay film. It's not great, I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's fun to have it. It's fun to revisit this film all these years later. Also picked up Pocahontas. Pocahontas is another one of those films that I saw as a kid. I thought it was just fine. I didn't mind it, but I didn't like fall in love with it or anything. And then I went and rewatched this just earlier this year, and I watched it in high definition, and I don't want to say my jaw was on the floor, but it was a very, very different experience watching this with adult eyes. This is, again, a fantastically well animated film. The artwork in this film is beautiful, absolutely strikingly beautiful. Really like a very bold visual art style, and they use a lot of non-naturalistic colors, a lot of exaggerated colors, which are made to convey emotions. So if there's a very calm, natural woodland scene, then it might be sort of bluish or purplish, and when things begin to escalate into violence, then they'll go more orange and yellow and red and things like that. It's a very bold choice. It's very rare to have the emotions portrayed so directly through colors, but the film is gorgeous. So that's just one positive. I really like the slightly more mature tone. It's a bit more serious. It's the first, and I still think only Disney film, if I'm not mistaken, to be based on a real historical person. And it is, of course, based on real historical events, but that does not mean, and I really want to stress this, does not mean that this is a documentary. I see so many people nowadays, and I don't understand this at all. People who openly accuse animated Disney films for not being historically accurate, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, they're not documentaries. These are animated family films. That's all they are. That's all they will ever be. And I actually find it sort of bothersome almost that modern Disney films are becoming more and more politicized, because I think that's terrible. They should be pieces of entertainment, pieces of art, first and foremost, nothing else. But yeah, anyway, I really appreciate Pocahontas. Beautiful animation, some of the most beautiful songs ever made for a Disney film. So yeah, I think there's a lot to enjoy about Pocahontas, honestly, especially if you watch it through adult eyes. It's a very, very different experience from when I was a kid and I watched it. It's actually quite a respectable little film. A lot of people will always quote two films from the 90s, from the Disney Renaissance, as their favorites, The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast. I hear that over and over and over and over again. But I've always been much more drawn to films like Pocahontas, like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, I should say, and like Mulan. You know, films of this ilk are a lot better, in my opinion, because they're a bit more grounded, they're a bit more serious, but at the same time, they're not documentaries, and they shouldn't be documentaries. I think really the only message that this film conveys, and the only message that this film should convey, is, you know, try to see things from a different point of view. Try to see things from a stranger's perspective before you judge them or attack them or become violent with them. And most kids are not even going to pick up on that stuff, honestly. Some of them might pick up on it a little bit, but I think most are just going to see it as a piece of entertainment, and that is fine. It's really just wonderful, just fine. Because this film cannot be historically accurate, otherwise it would end with Pocahontas' tribe being slaughtered and raped and taken hostage, you know. But I do enjoy, I will say that I really enjoy that scene when they sing a song called Savages. And they portray it from both perspectives. They portray it from, you know, the settlers, the British settlers, and from the Native Americans. And they both see one another as savages. That is actually a very, if anything, a very grounded and realistic approach to it. So yeah, Pocahontas, actually quite a good little film, very, very well made, if nothing else, and probably one of the most quote-unquote beautiful Disney films ever made, in every sense of the word. And finally, Lilo and Stitch was the final Disney film I picked up on Blu-ray. This is another one that I had on VHS as a kid, watched it once or twice, maybe. And then I saw it again a couple of years ago as an adult, and it was like watching a completely different movie. It's a very, very, very different experience. As a kid, I thought this was a cute little film about a little alien who comes to Hawaii and befriends a little girl, and they go on adventures, and it's fun, and the end. But when I saw it as an adult, it was a very different experience indeed. This is probably the closest thing to Walt Disney's E.T. You can ever get. Because E.T., even though it's about a little alien that lands on Earth and befriends a young boy, it is actually about a divorce. Steven Spielberg said that he really came upon E.T. when he was trying to come to terms with, you know, his family's divorce and how he experienced that as a child, and that is also a very relevant theme in Lilo and Stitch. It's an unusual family unit. It's I don't want to say a broken family unit, because there's a lot of people who live without a parent or without both parents. But this film does a really admirable job of portraying that and exploring that, and it's actually pretty heartwarming at times, and it's clever and funny, and it's probably not going to go down as the greatest film in Disney canon, but I do think it is slightly underrated, and I do think that people need to give it a second watch and watch it through fresh eyes, because if you've only ever seen this film as a kid, then you're probably going to appreciate it a whole lot more as an adult, because it's got a lot more going for it than just, you know, a funny little space creature who comes to Hawaii. So, again, not the greatest film in Disney canon, but nevertheless one that is fun to watch, and it has a slightly unique style to it. It's a bit more modern. It's got a very unique character style. They're a bit more rounded and a bit more bottom heavy, so to speak. And yeah, it's a very unique sort of Disney film. It stands out for, I guess, better and for worse, as this little rare sort of gem in the Disney animation canon. Okay, so that was it for this video. I've actually had to stop my phone and cool it off a bunch of times, so this video might be a little bit jerky. but my phone is still overheating, despite the fact that it is the coolest day in months right now. So we had Lilo and Stitch, Pocahontas, Robin Hood, the Aristocats, Alice in Wonderland, Bambi, Fantasia. I should mention I also have Fantasia 2000, which was a later sequel, much later sequel. I think Fantasia 2000 is a little bit more accessible, so if you check out Fantasia, definitely check out Fantasia 2000 as well. Also the Omen Trilogy on Blu-ray and Star Wars The Last Jedi, the Steelbook edition. Alright, hope you've enjoyed this video, and stay cool out there. Enjoy the summer. I've got just over 3 more weeks to enjoy my vacation, so there might be more videos. Might have some more stuff coming in the mail soon. Alright, take care of yourselves.